Hey everyone, and welcome to part 16 of Let's Clone a Pokemon Game. In this tutorial, it's going to be a little more advanced. We're going to be actually adding different abilities to each one of our monsters. So each monster has 4 separate abilities that they're able to use during battle. These abilities can be changed, upgraded, and manipulated in different ways. So each one has its own specifics for how much damage it does, what type of attack it is, uh, what kind of debuffs it could possibly apply to other monsters and whatnot. But for now, we're going to keep it basic like usual and just set up the basic form of how to do the different attacks. So it might get a little more confusing for people. This is another kind of advanced tutorial. So hopefully everybody can follow along. Try simplifying it the best I can. There is not too much to set up here, so it won't take you long to get this attack system set up. Now, we're only going to be calling for each attack a debug.log telling us which attack we used, but in the future we're going to be calling different functions for each attack and placing them into different functions for actually calculating how much damage we do. Now, the formula is going to be very simplified for each ability, and we're just going to be having to compare different variables in order to calculate everything. But I will save that for later tutorials. Just want to explain what's going on currently, and we'll get started with what we need to set up. Now, the first thing you're going to want to do is set up a new class. So just create a new blank JavaScript file and name it attack. And this is what we're going to be using for actually setting up each of our attacks for each one of our monsters. So these can be reused and everything like that. And that's the only thing you need to set up for that. Now we can actually jump in. So we're going to be messing with 3 different scripts, the main, monster, and attack. And the first one we're going to do is actually set up the attack. So we're going to be creating a new class for attack. So you can pretty much think of this as, the attacks for each one of your monsters. So if they each have 4 different abilities, you want to actually assign each monster their own unique abilities. But we're able to reuse it and change it how we want. So for name, we're going to be using move, which is going to be an enum. And this will be the move our monster is going to be using. So I set up a few basic ones here, nothing too fancy. Vine, tackle, smash, shock, charge, and there are different types of abilities. Now the cool thing about this is you can mix and match whatever you want. If you want a tackle attack to be, physical, or if you want it to be psychic or whatever, I have them displayed right here. They can be whatever you want. So that's where type comes in for attack type. So even though a move will do a certain attack, it could be applying something else. So the good thing about attack type is we can compare this when we attack a enemy monster, or if they attack us, if we're weak to that. So if we're weak to grass, we'll calculate attack type and whichever one of these to our monster's weakness. So I don't remember if we set up weakness yet. I don't believe we have set it up. That's going to be later that we set that up. But if we are weak to an attack, it'll deal more damage to us, and that's where that comes into play. And then damage, each attack has its own damage value, and we might be adding more stats in here later on. But every time you use a certain attack, they each have their own stats. So some attacks are weaker than others, some apply certain effects to others. So we won't worry about that too much right now, but we'll be adding to this later most likely. So yeah, that's the basics of the attack. Just imagine them as, like I said before, just different attacks that each monster has to use against other monsters. And so we'll jump in the monster, and we're going to be taking this attacks class. So this is, this class that we created, and we're going to be calling this attacks of type attack, and we're going to be making this array. Since each monster has 4 separate attacks, that's what we're going to be doing. You could also simplify this if you want and not use all of the attacks later on. But for now, each one will just have 4 basic attacks. We're going to be able to swap out each one of these attacks for different attacks if we like. We could create a entire pool like we did with the all monsters. So we can just specify basic attacks depending on that. I'm not sure how I'm going to work with the leveling system with these attacks. I might have to times, damage by what your level is or something like that in order to calculate that out properly and whatnot. But for now, just going to keep it basic. So why we're setting up this is each monster is going to have 4 attacks. And for those 4 attacks, we want them each to be different so we can customize these. So I'll show you that all in a second, but we just want to jump to our main real quick and I'll show you guys the rest of the setup. We'll jump into there and then I'll show you how it looks in game. So if we want to actually, be able to pick out a certain ability to use, we want to first add a monster that we have equipped. So this is our monster that we're going to be fighting against this monster. And now later on we're going to have to add some kind of inventory for multiple monsters. So if this one dies, we'll equip a new one or the next one in the lineup. Or if we want to, swap out different ones, this is the main one we're going to be using. So for now, this is mostly for testing just with one monster. But we want to do monsters equipped equals all monsters 0. So this is where all our monsters are, and we want to equip the first one to that equipped monsters to use. And now we want to add in something for our ongui in our main function. Now what we're going to be doing for this is actually displaying the different attacks that we can use for each monster. Okay, I should reword that. It's only going to be displaying attacks for our equipped monster. And these are abilities that we can use when we actually go into battle. Now we're going to have to set this system up a little bit different because we're going to be using, attack, defend, escape, I believe. I might have to go, or like items and whatnot. But this will be our attack function. So right now we're just going to have our attack function. So what we're going to be doing is using a for loop. And so variable I equals 0, I is less than 4 because we want to actually display 4 of our attacks, I++. So this will keep looping through and displaying each one of our attacks. Now we're going to be using buttons for this, so we can just click on an attack and use it. And so here is something a little bit different in this one. Since we want to display our attacks separated from each other, so our buttons aren't stacked, we're going to be using this formula. So first it calculates this, so it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, and so it'll be spacing out our different attacks. Now you can adjust this number to your liking, how close you want it to be, but this is just what I set mine up with. And then this might be a little bit tricky for people to understand, so hopefully I can explain this a little bit more. So monsters equipped is going to be our current monster equipped. And from that monster, we're going to be grabbing attacks, this right here. And we want to grab each one of those attacks. So since there's 4 in there, and we're looping through 4, we want to display each one of those. And we want to display the name of each one onto this button. So each one on this button will have a different name according to what we plugged into attacks and what we have plugged into name here. So it's kind of going through a couple of different, classes and stuff, but it's what we need to get the game how we want it. So this is pretty much just grabbing the attack name for each attack. Now if we click on this button, we want it to activate a different function for each one depending on what the attack is. For now we're simplifying this by doing monster equipped and it's grabbing the attacks, whichever one, .name. So it's doing the exact same thing here, but we're just displaying the name as well. So we're just saying used, whatever attack, blah, blah, blah. And that's pretty much the basic setup there. And that's all we need to do for that. Now, the next thing we need to do is go back to our all monsters. So this is all our monsters listed. And so we can go down and you can see we have a new thing for attacks. It's going to be set at 0, but you need to set each one of these at 4. I'm not going to worry about these other monsters because I'm not using their abilities and we're not displaying their abilities, we're just displaying our monster. So what we want to do is add 4 to that, and you can drop down each element. Now you can see in here we have 4 different attacks. First attack is going to be Vine, set it to Grass, Tackle, Psychic. See, that's the cool thing about enums is you can do simple drop downs. So I could have hundreds of these and set them differently for each one very quickly. And I can change the damage. And later on, later on when we upgrade and level up our monsters, we're going to want to change, how much damage each one of these does, our main damage and different stuff like that. So we want to have a way to simply customize that. So once you get that all set up, you're ready to go. Now we're not going to be using really any of this currently, we just want to display the name of each one. So we can go in here real quick. We can go walk around until we get into a battle. Now we got into a battle with Monster 4, and we have our different attacks. Now these should be displayed down here. This monster needs to be moved over in this direction, and ours needs to be here. So we don't have any displays for our monsters, or our monster that's currently on the field yet, but we have all of this. Grab our console, clear it, and we can click on each one of these, and you can see Vine, Tackle, Smash, Shock. So we're using different abilities for each one. All we have to do now is actually tie in this, so when we use an ability, it actually, affects this enemy here with a different attack. So for whatever this enemy's weakness is, we want to be able to attack, apply certain amounts of damage and calculate that all in, calculating critical strike, calculate in, what type of attack this is. So if this is grass, or let's just say, we're using a fire attack against a grass enemy, and, their weakness is fire, we want to deal more damage if it's fire. That's the reason we're separating these to be different types, so we can calculate that in as well. Now it's going to get more confusing from here, most likely, so hopefully people can follow along. If you need to watch the tutorial a few times to understand, it'll start making more sense. All we're doing is just doing different classes mixed together in order to form all that. But yeah, hopefully people can understand. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. I'll try making some more simple tutorials in the future. We're going to be going over a simple shop system and stuff, so I may switch over to that. But yeah, if anyone needs any help, has any questions, just ask. Hopefully I explained it well enough for everyone. And yep, until next time.